Good evening. I am Connie Cunningham, Chair of the Housing Commission, and I am calling this meeting together to begin. So the first order of business is the roll call. If you could take the roll call, Nikki, please.
Certainly. So when I say your name, please say present. Chair Cunningham,
Present.
Vice Chair He,
Present.
Commissioner Narayan,
Present.
Commissioner Jin.
Present.
Excellent, everyone is present.
Thank you. And I'm going to make an audible here. We have an announcement that our colleague and our friend, Commissioner Ryan Goals, he resigned on May 14th due to the fact that he's moving out of the Bay Area. He wanted me to tell you all that he was thankful for the opportunity to serve on this commission. And I have a few words I wanted to say because I'm sorry to see him leave. But I do wish him well in his future endeavors. Ryan was very active in Cupertino on several other boards before coming to ours. So I'm thankful that he had his time with us here. He was a big asset. He was our business representative, and he stepped immediately into the role of vice chair. And he was superb. Not only was Ryan always prepared, but he could tell what was needed, not least of which was his effective support during deliberations. I especially will miss his calm demeanor. I think you will all understand what that is about. Thank you, Ryan. I hope you will be able to come to the commissioners' dinner in the fall, where you will be honored with a certificate and a lovely dinner with us, your friends, and all the other commissioners, as they do annually here in Cupertino. And I was going to ask, does anybody else want to say anything to Ryan? I can ask you, Michelle. You bet.
It's okay.
Yes,
I was gonna say, I didn't get to know Ryan very well, but I certainly appreciate your service, man. So thank you so much for giving your time and, your thoughtful feedback and contribution. Thanks, Ryan.
thank you. And Yuni, would you like to say something?
Yes, I will say, so for the time that I've known Ryan, he's always been really kind and considerate, and I've seen him outside of the, like the housing commission meeting. And it's always nice to just talk to him, so we will definitely listen.
Would you like to say a few words?
Well,
Commissioner
again,
Ryan?
just like Lida said, did not know Ryan much, just met him once during our last commissioners meeting, but the valuable insight of our business representatives really good. So wish we get a good replacement to match his match him, so but we wish the very best for Ryan.
Thank you, everybody, for their comments, and thank you again, Ryan, so much for calling in a friend for us. So now, moving along to the regular agenda items. Agenda item number 1 is approval of the minutes. And the action item just reads, approve the minutes of the March 27th, 2025 Housing Commission meeting. Did everyone have an opportunity to read the minutes? Are there any comments or corrections?
I just wanted to add that we did get a written comment on some typos.
In the minutes?
Yeah, there was a wrong name placed for one of the voting items, so that'll be fixed in the final version.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, whoever you were. Okay, so if there are no further comments, then I will bring it back to, do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, and do I hear a second?
A second.
So there's been seconded to approve the minutes of the March 27th, 2025 Housing Commission meeting. Thank you.
We should do roll call for people to vote to approve the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nikki, would you take the roll call for approval?
Absolutely. So when I say your name, please say aye, nay, or abstain. Chair Cunningham,
Aye.
Vice Chair He.
Aye.
Commissioner Jindi,
Aye.
Commissioner Narayan.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. So for our next item, are there any postponements?
We have no postponements on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, do we have any oral communications?
No audience members present.
Thank you. So moving along to written communications. Do we have written communications?
There was one written communication submitted about the desire to have line items split between the two affordable housing projects in the document for the con plan, so we can make that adjustment.
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I agree with that written communication.
Yep.
So thank you for making that adjustment. Okay, so moving on, was there any old business?
None.
Okay, so we are now going to go on to new business. The new business agenda item 2 is about the 2025-2030 Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Plan, otherwise known as the CON Plan, and the 2025-26 Annual Action Plan, known as the AAP. And the recommended action is to approve the draft CDG CON Plan and the AAP for submittal directly to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. And I understand we have a guest speaker with you today, Nikki, as well as yourself.
That's right. So I'll be giving staff presentation, and then also in attendance, we have Root Policy Representative Sherry Coulter here to help with the presentation.
Welcome.
We can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So on tonight's agenda, we have, as Chair Cunningham said, the consolidated plan and the annual plan for CDBG. I'm going to first go over a little bit about what that is, what to expect, and then we'll go into the content of the document. So the 2025-2030 consolidated plan is a long-range 5-year plan for federal monies that we get from the CDBG program, which we manage directly, as well as the home program, which we manage through the county administratively. It's for public infrastructure, public services, and affordable housing. The 5-year consolidated plan is really a long-range document trying to project what are our emerging needs for the city in relation to these areas. And the first part of it is a research document. So we research kind of the economic sort of background, the housing market, the sort of condition of infrastructure in the city, what are the environmental impacts, and what are the demographic changes that we expect to see for the city in the next 5 years. And from that, we essentially create what are the needs of the city, and then therefore what should be the goals of our spending to address those needs. And then in that plan, there is the first year action plan, right? The action plans are based off the needs and goals that are established in the CON plan. Each year, right, we authorize funding through this voting body in order to fund specific projects and specific activities. Each of those projects or activities have to tie back to a certain need or goal established in the CON plan. That way we can say that each year we're making progress towards meeting those goals. And so in the CON plan, there exists the first year of action plan to try to meet those goals. So this is in relation to the NOFA that was given out. I'm going to go into the timeline of the development of this, right? So started off in 2024 when Root Policy came on board, doing research with us, but also the other jurisdictions in the county, right? Because a lot of this information is really studied on a countywide level. Then in November, we published our NOFA for our funding available for the year. Then in December 19th, Root Policy came to a special meeting of the Housing Commission to present the findings of their research, all the economic, demographic, housing, so on and so forth, to kind of prime the commission, but also give you an idea of what would be those emerging needs and emerging goals. Then in January 2025, staff, as in myself, began drafting, kind of based on that report, in the plan essentially, right? And so that way in February 4th, when the NOFA closed, when staff gave our recommendation, right, it could basically be based off that data, right? That's how we formulated our staff recommendation. Then in March, the Housing Commission met for the funding recommendations. We brought our staff recommendation, and then you guys also brought in your expertise to make a Housing Commission recommendation, which was then brought to the City Council on April 15th for the City Council funding approval. Afterwards, we essentially had a full plan now, right? Because then we have the research and then we have the activities we plan to fund with. So then we created the full draft, put it out to public, put a newspaper posting, put it on the website, also put a couple copies on City Hall and in the library for people to read for a 30-day draft noticing period. After which we collected all community feedback, made several more edits to the plan. And then finally, we are here on May 22nd for the Housing Commission plan approval to approve to form the consolidated plan and action plan to be submitted to HUD in June. So with that, I want to take a moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can have Root Policy give us a quick presentation as a refresher of what were the research findings of the consolidated plan.
Hi, thank you all for your time tonight. Give me a minute to get my technology act together here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. So thank you all for your time this evening. My name is Sherry Coulter, as Nikki mentioned, and I am from Root Policy Research. We are a small housing policy research firm working with Santa Clara County to complete the 2025 to 2030 cycle of consolidated plans for the urban county and also for 7 entitlement jurisdictions, which includes Cupertino. So I'll start with a quick overview of what the consolidated plan comprises, followed by a summary of the community engagement activities that were done for the plan, an overview of primary findings from the needs assessment and market analysis sections of the plan, and lastly, the proposed goals for this consolidated plan cycle. Nikki will then present the annual action plan with specific project recommendations and allocations. So since these plans only come up every 5 years, we often find it helpful to give an overview of what the consolidated plan is exactly. And I apologize if some of this is repetitive from previous presentations. So the consolidated plan is required to be submitted to HUD every 5 years in order for Cupertino to receive community development block grant funding, which can be used for a variety of projects, including infrastructure and facilities improvements, housing rehabilitation, and some public services, although public services can only comprise a maximum of 15% of the total funding. The con plan incorporates both data analysis and citizen input to identify priority housing and community development needs. The report is divided into 3 main sections. There is the needs assessment section, or NA, the market analysis, or MA, and then the strategic plan, which outlines goals for the planning cycle, for the full 5-year planning cycle. Since Cupertino only receives CDBG funding directly from HUD, only an abridged plan is required, which removes much of the needs assessment section and some of the market analysis section as well. Cupertino does receive home investment partnership funds indirectly from the county through participation in the home consortium, and the county completes a full consolidated plan. So CDBG funds must be used to benefit low to moderate income households. And then the annual action plan, as Nikki mentioned, is then submitted every year and outlines the specific projects that will be funded during that year. So the 2025 allocations were just released by HUD last week that everybody was patiently waiting for. And you can see that they really didn't differ much from 2024, which is great, and how they compare across the different entitlement jurisdictions in the county. And you can also find CDB allocations for the whole nation if you're interested by following the link below or just Googling CDBG allocation. So as mentioned, an important component of the plan is citizen participation and stakeholder consultation. Community engagement efforts were coordinated countywide to maximize resources and to avoid any duplication. We worked with the Community Planning Collaborative to organize a variety of opportunities for folks to engage on housing and community needs and priorities in their towns. The timing of the process occurring last October through December was not ideal, with folks being sort of maxed out on civic participation with the election and bumping up into the holidays. But we were really pleased with the overall turnout that we did have, particularly from stakeholders. There was a website called Let's Talk Housing Santa Clara County that provided general information on consolidated plans, a little video tutorial in the process, an overview of the process, links to previous plans, and opportunities to provide comments or sign up for events and to participate in the community and stakeholder survey. We held 3 virtual stakeholder events which were really well attended, with 72 representatives from a variety of organizations, including city and county staff, nonprofit service providers working with unhoused residents, organizations providing legal services, childcare, services for people with disabilities, and community advocates, just to name a few. Some people even attended more than one event, which was fantastic. So we had some online activities during these workshops and then placed people into small breakout rooms by their specific focus area as much as possible to share stuff more individually with us. Through these meetings, we were able to also encourage stakeholders to spread the word to their communities through email and social media to participate in the resident survey and workshops. We held 2 virtual community workshops with a total of 55 residents attending. The community and stakeholder survey was open, and I just realized that I have this out of order, and I apologize. Hopefully you're following okay. The community and stakeholder survey was open from early October last fall until the end of the year. For North County, we had almost 900 responses from residents, 34 from Cupertino, and 79 stakeholders. And lastly, we did conduct a few individual stakeholder interviews to discuss Cupertino needs specifically. So top resident needs identified through all of this engagement, not surprisingly, affordable rental housing, rental assistance needed, homeownership opportunities, difficulty navigating housing processes and resources in general, emphasizing the need for individualized case management and improved systems for accessing information, knowing what people qualify for, and assistance with applications. Housing, of course, is even harder to find for groups that have special needs, including residents with disabilities. Seniors are increasingly living in RVs that are not meant to are in poor condition and have accessibility issues and safety concerns. Domestic violence survivors struggle to find housing, and they have special needs as well. There are only 63 emergency shelter beds in the county for domestic violence survivors, and they particularly need low barrier safety and trauma-informed crisis housing. More accessible workforce development programs, for example, at nights and on weekends in multiple languages, and microenterprise opportunities were frequently referenced as a critical need by both residents and stakeholders. And then the top 5 critical needs identified by Cupertino survey respondents specifically were sidewalk and street, neighborhood improvements, senior centers and services, transportation for seniors, childcare, and community centers, all of these with an equal number of responses. So there is an appendix to the consolidated plan that includes a full analysis of all of the survey responses and an overview of the feedback we received through the various engagement activities. Oops. So needs assessment and market analysis. So the housing needs assessment section uses data provided by HUD called CHAS, Comprehensive Housing Affordability Strategy, data on unhoused residents and public housing data to evaluate housing needs in the community. As mentioned, the Cupertino set for Cupertino, because you do an abridged plan, this section is very minimal, but we did still include a lot of the data that we had since we were doing this for the whole county. So primary findings for the needs assessment included around 5,500 Cupertino households have incomes that are less than 80% of the county's median income and are at risk of cost burden, which cost burden is defined as spending more than 30% of income each month on housing costs. 70% of these households have some type of housing need, which could be that they're in an overcrowded situation, or that there's a condition issue with their housing. But the most common issue is cost burden. And about half of those Cupertino residents who are cost burdened are severely cost burdened, which means they're spending more than 50% of their income each month on housing. So the 2023 PIT count showed a decline in unhoused residents in Cupertino. However, this could be due to limited services and shelter available in the city, and all of Cupertino's unhoused residents that were part of that PIT count were unsheltered. There are almost 11,000 elderly residents in Cupertino, and of course, elderly folks are more likely to have accessibility needs that should be addressed. And then approximately 3,500 Cupertino residents have some type of disability and potentially some accessibility needs. So then the market analysis section of the plan primarily looks at the cost and supply of housing. So primary findings from this section include, of course, Cupertino is really high income. The median household income is just over 230,000 annually. Both owners and renters have median incomes that are substantially higher than the county overall. The median rent in Cupertino was more than 3,500 per month in 2023, higher than the county overall, which is approaching 3,000 and the highest among all entitlement jurisdictions. Cupertino's home value is 2.8 million, unaffordable to the vast majority of households. 98% of Cupertino homes are only affordable to residents making substantially more than 150,000 per year. Cupertino had a slow rate of housing production compared to other jurisdictions in the county during the timeframe between 2013 and 2023, growing only by about 4%. And Cupertino has a gap of approximately 1,100 rental units that would be affordable to renters with incomes below 75,000, which would be about, a maximum of 1,875 per month. Then, as part of the countywide consolidated plan, Root also did a full regional market analysis, which is also provided as in the appendix to the plan. And some of the information from that regional analysis was pulled into the MA or market analysis portion of Cupertino's plan. So this brings us to the goals that are being proposed for the next 5-year cycle of the plan. The broad goals for Cupertino are affordable housing production and preservation, supportive services for low-income households, unhoused residents, and special populations, including fair housing resources, supportive services for elderly folks and residents with disabilities, and lastly, public infrastructure and facilities improvements to benefit low to moderate income households. HUD then also requires that jurisdictions indicate how these goals will be measured, and this would be through quantifying how many housing units are rehabilitated, affordable housing units added, homelessness prevented, and unhoused services provided by person or by household, and how many residents were provided services. So, of course, the existing need far exceeds the amount of funding available through CDBG for Cupertino. But we feel that the goals that we are proposing provide a broad framework that allow for a variety of projects to be considered over the course of the 5-year consolidated plan and reflect the priority needs identified during the planning process. So with that, I think I can pass back to Nikki to maybe go through the really interesting part of knowing exactly what projects are being proposed for funding and allocations.
Thanks, Sherry.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
Got it.
Thank you. We see. Cool. So we're gonna go ahead and take it back now to the content of the plan itself. I'm gonna be sharing the strategic plan and annual plan parts that were directly changed by our new research findings, as well as through the recommendations of both this body and the city council, and how that can kind of change our long-term goals. Starting with first SB 10, geographic priorities, we did see an increased need for public infrastructure improvements and public facility improvements. And we were able to take a look into our kind of existing CDBG target area. We are what is known as an exception grantee, which means we don't really have low-income neighborhoods, but we do have low-income people. So normally a CDBG target neighborhood is only in a census block or tract that has 50% low-income households. Our percentage is different. As an exception grantee, we can go from anywhere above 23.8% of low-income households in censorship, which gives us a lot more room to work with. All the areas you see in blue on this map are areas that can now use CDBG money in for public infrastructure. This opens up a lot of possibilities. This could mean a lot more curb gutter sidewalk improvements, street lighting, street work improvements. Bike lanes is a possibility as well. As you see, much of Stevens Creek is now included, as well as the Anza. Next up, SB 25, priority needs. So to enumerate kind of what we originally saw in the market analysis, right? Our 4 priority needs established in this next 5-year plan are: 1, affordable housing, which we will quantify by creating and preserving low income household units. Number 2, prevent and assist those experiencing homelessness, right? Through supporting activities that prevent and 3, community services. So supporting activities that serve both the aging population, but also in general low-income families as well. And then 4, public infrastructure and facilities, right? So this is improving infrastructure and facilities in the CDBG target area and or any facility that we can determine to benefit low-income households primarily as limited clientele. So an idea for that is like the senior center, for example. Next up, we have SP 35 and AP 15 anticipated resources. So this is what you guys have kind of already voted on and seen. We took the 5 funding sources that we have for the first year. That is the below market rate, affordable housing fund, community development block grant, human services grant, permanent local housing allocation, and any kind of inventory grant money that we have from the county of Santa Clara. We take the amount that we are planning to award out in that first year for action plan FY 25-26, right? And for our one-time funding, then we just kind of carry that over. But for our kind of continued funding, like CDBG that we continue to expect to get every year, or PLHA, we can make an estimate for what we can project 5 years into the future that we will continue to get. So we have one column that you guys have already seen, which you've already voted on in FY 25. And then we can also create a remaining portion that we can expect for the rest of the year, just as projections, right? So that's not a commitment, right? That's just what we expect to be able to use in order to meet our goals.
I have to, admit, can we ask some questions going through this? Because I don't know how I can remember this. Just keep going. Is it possible to take a question now on this chart?
Okay, go ahead.
This permanent local housing allocation.
Yeah.
We've already allocated 908,000,
Yes.
and yet this shows for the rest of the time as 750,000.
That's a projection for what we expect to receive from the state, going until 23rd.
Okay, so this was not a one-time. Okay, I
No.
thought that was a one-time PLHA, so it's not a one-time.
Yeah, PLHA is similar to CDBG as a formula grant. So we expect to receive more in the coming years.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So next up, we're gonna go into the adjustments that were made. So we did receive our final allocation for CDBG, as you saw in Sherry's presentation. And so there was a slight adjustment to the CDBG funded activities, right? It was just very slightly smaller than what we expected. So for these are the final funding awards that we're going to have in the plan for Live Oak Adult Day Services. They will be getting $16,800. And then West Valley Community Services for their care program, they'll be getting $37,200. Very, very slight reductions, but overall, pretty much true to what we awarded them. And this kind of reduction was based on the Housing Commission Resolution 17-02, which talks about what to do basically when the actual amount awarded does not perfectly match our estimates. Next up, we have our CDBG Capital Housing Awards. So we had 2 recipients for that, Rebuilding Together Silicon Valley, which will be getting $107,500. And then Charities Housing, Mary Avenue Project, for their kind of public right-of-way improvements. They will be getting $152,626.7 for like the remainder of the CDBG grant. And third, this wasn't affected by the CDBG allocation, but this is just to bring back to this body because the city council didn't make an adjustment in their final approval. This is the BMR Capital Housing Projects funding commitments. They chose to award Charities Housing Mary Avenue $3 million, as well as Eden Housing Wolf Road $1,083,200 for both projects in total. So next we go to AP 20, our goals. This is our first year action plan goals. I know it might be hard to read. I'm sorry. There's a lot. So first, we have homeowner rehabilitation. as part of the preserving low mod income units. So we hope to use for our grant to Rebuilding Together to rehabilitate 7 low income households. For affordable rental unit construction, using both the money that we've put in through the BMR program as well as our PLHA money, we are awarding to both Mary Avenue and Wolf Road for a combined total of 289 housing units that we expect to construct. Next, we have for services towards the elderly, through both our CDBG program and our HSG, that's our general fund program. We will be funding public service activities to benefit 59 different households. For services to low-income families and to help prevent homelessness, we will doing homeless prevention activities through the CDBG, HSG program, county funding program, and through the BMR fund for a total of serving 228 different households. We have budgeted for planning and administration $70,900 for the first year. And then finally, for community development, which is our public infrastructure / public facilities / built environment things related to affordable housing, we have our CDBG grant of $152,626.37. That's going to Mary Avenue for public right-of-way improvements.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sherry's screening is blocking the last column. Is that the goals for 25 to 26 or?
Yes, that's what those are
Okay.
25, 26 with the money that we are making available this year.
So are we saying that by the end of 2026, we're going to have 259 housing units?
That's a great question, right? So no, we don't expect them to be completed within the year, but with the money that we are making available this year, right? Those are the goals that we expect to be met. Kind of, you get what I'm saying? So we've made the money available this year, so the goal is tied technically to this year, but it can happen anytime within the clock plan.
A little bit confused.
That,
Yeah,
because I feel like most of those housing units will come from the Eden project, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
from both projects, yes, yeah.
So the Murray Avenue project has only 40 units.
Yeah.
So the mostly come from the Eden project.
Yeah.
I believe that project has not quite been approved.
No, I mean, neither has plan improvement yet, right? It's not tied to like the actual completion of the project. The goal is tied to the year we made the money available for the project. Yeah. So it's a little different way of thinking about it.
And it's so promising.
Yeah.
It's great. We tackled the problem, so let's celebrate right now. That's all. Okay.
Like if I may add something how I understand it.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, then. As I understand it, the 40 units will be built starting sooner rather than later and finished in a couple of years. For those 40 units. The other units are even a phase 2 of Eden, so I'm not even sure when it starts. It might start even later. So they will be building some teacher housing. That's a different aspect of it. So that's what I had understood.
That's
So
correct.
I think that's what you were saying.
That's
Yes,
what
that's
I
correct.
understand. So it seems like plugging that there seems like it's almost done deal.
Yeah.
And practically it seems like it's far from done deal.
It's strange, right? Because we know unlikely to be completed in the year. This is just kind of how HUD, who we're giving the plan to, tracks goals, right? If we give money, we have to have a goal attached to it. Otherwise, they're gonna be like, gave money and you have no reason for it. So we have to attach the goal, the reason why we're giving them money. So even though we know it won't be completed this year, the goal of building those rental units is attached to this year's allocation. And we've made that money available to them now.
So I'm curious, what happens when the goals are not met? What's the consequences? Is there any?
No, it's for us to know when goals are not met, that we're maybe not spending money efficiently or giving it to the right people. But if we know, right, it's no one's fault that it's not done this year, then it's not really a consequence. Yeah. Yeah.
Just the moral impact, in other words.
But these are great questions.
Well, I guess I would like to add something though, because it takes time. the complete unit. So
Yeah.
even for the Mary Avenue, which in fact, I didn't realize it had another step to go through with planning. But in any case, that being said, they get the money now, but they have 2 years at least to finish the 40 units. So you will not see a completion of that. And that's not a moral problem. It's just that's how long it takes to build the
Yeah.
bicycle. A practical problem.
And
Yeah.
through our annual
Because there are
report,
maybe moral problems to some things, but this particular one, I don't see it that way.
Well, I think the money is needed for a project to happen.
Right.
It's not like
Right.
you finish a project and then you give them the money.
Yeah.
Right.
You
They
need
have
the money to even, to get that, for the whole process to happen. My question though is.
Yeah.
Can go back to
Sure.
the previous slide.
no problem.
So the one that we approved last time, right? So that's for fiscal year 2024, 25, 26,
That's right.
right?
Yes.
So, but those funding, so again, in the, going back so we are still talking about 25, 26 year, right, fiscal year, right?
Yes.
And these are not recurring. But then this whole report is for 25 to 30.
Mhm.
So are we saying that the amount, this is again hypothetical, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're saying that the amount that we approved for this fiscal year is going to get repeated for the next 5 years?
That's a good question. So we can say that for our formula grants, where we expect to get a regular kind of replenishment. So CDBG, PLHA, and our human services grant, because we get pretty much the same amount next year. So we can make, and that'll be the topic of the next slide, like what we can expect to continue funding throughout the next 5 years. But for our one-time funding things like the BMR fund, we can't make that guess, right? Because we don't know exactly if we will get more and when we will award more. Yeah. These are great questions. And by the way, so when we do our annual reports of this, if something is not constructed yet, we can still take credit for progress that's been made by saying like, well, they got planning approval this year. Or they got started constructing this year, and that'll help, right? Yeah.
And I'll add, sorry, for the own director, I will just add that both projects are actively pursuing their land use entitlements and there are in the works for evaluation. So there's no reason for us to say that a project will stall for whatever reason.
Right.
Not to say they wouldn't, but they're actively pursuing.
Can I ask a quick question on the
Sure.
report that Jerry did, the road policy? Yeah, so you were talking about the lack of rental housing, Jerry, in your report. I think it was can't remember the percentage you had, like less than 3%. I'm not sure. There was a number, there's really low number. Now,
Oh,
did that,
affordable ownership, you mean, for?
yeah, I thought it was rental.
So for
rent-
rental, we did a gaps analysis that showed approximately that there were 1,100. There was a gap of 1,100 units that were affordable to people making less than 80% of the median income. And then for home ownership, that only, I think it was 2 or 3%, maybe this is what you're thinking of, that only,
Okay.
it was like 2 or 3% of houses are not affordable, definitely not affordable to anybody making under 150,000 and more like much higher than 150,000. Is that?
Yeah, no, that's what I was asking. My question is,
Mhm.
so this was based on what, 2024? What is it?
It was based on 2023 American Community Survey estimates.
So it did not take into account the new housing that we see now, like on Stevens Creek, on Foothill.
Probably not. And it's in the American Community Survey, it's important to recognize that it is a survey, they're estimates. So it's not going to be an exact number. There's going to be margins of error, but that's the best way to create the gaps analysis to estimate what the gaps are.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is just an observation. We have so many units have come up in the past couple in Cupertino, right? If you're going to present this to the state, don't we need to be more accurate in that case? When we say like, this is the number of units that are there, but which is actually 2 years old data,
Yeah, so the housing element, and Nikki, correct me if I'm wrong, that housing element that was 2023 through 2031 has a section, their own analysis of how many rental units are needed by income. So that would probably be the source that you would use for the state. But we just at Root Policy, the gaps analysis that we use is American Community Survey, and they may use American Community Survey data for the housing element as well.
Is part of
But
the
those
answer,
numbers seemed pretty similar to the housing element, if I remember correctly.
is part of the answer for Commissioner Narayan, the fact that this is a report for HUD, a
Right.
federal report, and it doesn't go to the state at all. Is that true?
Yeah, it's just for HUD and
Okay,
to-
that's,
it's true, by the way, that like accuracy is important. The amount of housing units created in 2024, right? That the difference that you'd be asking for. It's taken into account as like part of projections, right? It's really just an estimate looking 5 years into the future. So we can kind of take, this is why the survey data starts in like 2013 and it's building 10 years into the future, expecting to see how far we can go 5 years beyond that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay, is there any other projects like capital projects somehow in Horizon that can help close the gap of 11,000, no, 1,100 shortage of rentals? Is there anything in Cupertino? No, but you know, no.
If you want the full list of pipeline projects, I can send you our housing element. You're like, yeah, we can discuss that.
okay.
Yeah.
You would be very interested in doing that, if you haven't already. Because yes, there are things going.
The big one is the res, right? But anyways, yes.
Valco,
So,
yes, that's the big. Tell when.
so moving on, we have SP 45 goals, right? These are now the strategic plan, the 5-year plan goals. So using our year one commitments, as I said, we draw an estimate from there. So how much money can we expect to have from our formula grants as in the estimate? And then how much will we continue to have with our one-time funding? And based on that, can we make a goal for 5 years, assuming everything stays the same? How many, households we will continue to serve? And we can. So for homeowner rehabilitation, since we assume 7 units, we can assume throughout our 5-year term, we'll be doing for 35 housing units, for example. Affordable rental unit construction, that remains the same, right? The Wolf Road and the Mary Avenue project. So that is 289 housing units in total for the strategic 5-year plan. For elderly services, is funded by both CDBG and HSG, which are formula grants. So we can expect that number to multiply by 5. So that's 295 households throughout the 5-year. For low-income families and homeless populations, those also continue throughout the 5 years. So in total, we're looking at 1,140 different low-income families, which is great. And then for community development, right now, we still have just the one Mary Avenue project for public infrastructure, but we also have, our one public facility that we expect to continue doing improvements on, which is our senior center. We can put that on our list as well. And then if we want to do any future capital improvements, we can always refer to our public works, public infrastructure, integrity report, right, that they create going forward. So finally, I'll just mention there were some other changes made, right? The version of the comp plan that is attachment on the staff report was not the final. There was a supplemental made. So if you guys go online and check later, you will see there were some other minor changes made. I'll just list a few. Number one, it references the upcoming city council meetings on the anti-displacement policy. And it gave the date May 3rd at first, which, as we know, passed and didn't happen. That has been changed once more, but has been consolidated into a single meeting of the city council June 17th. So June 17th will be our anti-displacement policy going to the city council for study and approval, June 17th. And secondly, there have been some other changes. As you know, this is to be submitted to HUD, federal agency, and there have been certain executive orders given, right, wanting to for us to kind of comply with certain national directives. And so we have amended the plan to comply with those national directives. knowing that we are still fulfilling our commitments to serving Cupertino and always possible. Just writing it differently in the report to satisfy the executive orders. And that is where I will leave that.
Can I just ask one question? It was such good news and it got like, we're getting, we'll have money this year?
Yeah, yeah.
Because that was a big question, like,
Yeah.
are they going to fund any HUD stuff? And so, I mean, yay.
Yeah.
That was what I was holding my breath for, and it sort of went passed over, and I went, well, you must have celebrated yesterday.
Oh, I celebrate every day.
Or,
Every day is a celebration.
well,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. Go ahead.
So knowing that, we now open it to clarifying questions to the commission, if you have any more. Before we take it to the motion.
Oh, one more question for Charity Report. Is there a breakdown between single-family housing and townhomes for ownership versus rental?
So there is in the full consolidated plans, there is a breakdown by housing type, like by density. Because Cupertino does an abridged plan, it's not that we didn't do that in your plan, but in the regional housing market analysis that I mentioned, that's the appendix. It does go into housing type, like density, like the distribution of single family homes versus duplex to quadplexes to apartment buildings that are lower density to all the way up to 20 plus units. So in that housing market analysis, it does do that, and it compares to other jurisdictions in Santa Clara County.
In terms of the median home value as well, right? There would be a breakdown.
You know, I don't remember exactly if it went into that detail for the median value. You mean for like the median value for a townhome versus a single family home versus
Oh,
duplex,
right.
that type of thing?
You have-
You know, I'd have to look back in the housing market analysis. It was my colleague that is the guru with that. So I don't remember if it went into that detail. I want to say possibly, but I'm just not sure.
Yeah,
But
because
I would encourage you to read that. It's a great analysis, the regional market analysis.
no, just that $2.8 million value you have as a median home value. So that's
Okay, yes, that's just a straight across median for all homes, but Cupertino, the majority of homes are single family. Sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Religion, I think that's. Or, so, considering what they would like to ask. This isn't directly on your place, but, there was in the report, something called public housing accessibility and involvement. And, need to increase the number of accessible, assuming that means for, disabled,
Yes,
right?
that's it.
And it says, if required, via section 504 voluntary client, you could explain that because it says that the Santa Clara Housing Authority doesn't have such a thing. And so I don't know, like, why not? But, and then it also just says that, and there was some more interesting stuff about it, but if you could just explain what that is and why you don't have, it seems like such a good idea. Like that we would have something to do with accessible units.
Right, so we have a regional feasible accommodation policy. People living in a unit,
Yeah,
they are disabled, they can request to their landlord, right?
okay.
Giving their medical conditions, say like, I need grab bars, you know, in my
Okay.
shower, or I need a wider doorway for my wheelchair, and things like that. And those are things that they need, that they are
Okay.
required to provide for them.
Okay,
Right.
so is that like an ordinance or how does, How does that, how does a person?
That's part of ADA. That's, yeah, that's, yeah.
Oh, that's part of ADA.
Yeah.
Okay, so ADA requirements cover that for us then. Okay. Because the other thing that I just wanted to note to people, which is not a question, I'd be happy to know.
Yeah.
It's just pointing out that the Santa Clara Housing Association incorporates residents' input into the decision-making process through involvement of tenants, commissioners, and board members. The housing has a resident council comprising 5 residents from HUD-funded programs who will evaluate the effectiveness of their rental assistance programs. That's our county. To the extent that you're interested in that and want to know more about it. And it also says that they operate a family self-sufficiency program that's designed so residents can be involved in the development of self-sufficiency goals, job training, and other services. But I was especially interested in job training because of what we need here. So for those of you who might be interested, for anybody who might be interested in our Santa Clara County and what they have available, I thought this was a really important thing. And since we don't really know that much about it. So it's just for the information of the people here.
Can you tell me which page?
Yeah, the rest is on page 98 of the plan, and it's 110 of the searchable. Two numbers from it. Yes, and I do have one other comment, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Which is that they have there's a page on page 80 of the plan and page 92 of the searchable packet. There's a fire risk taken, fire risk. Describe fire vulnerability to these risks of housing occupied by low and moderate income households based on the analysis of data findings and methods. So I made it so teeny I can't read it, but the point being that low LMI households face many challenges, as discussed in all our needs assessment and market analysis, that these challenges are intensified when faced with a natural disaster or other type of emergency. Those that lose their homes will be slower to rebuild, especially with a large insurance deductible. For renters, they may not have renters insurance. Additionally, LMI households are less likely to have internet or cell phone service, or may lack proper English skills to be notified, or have proper information of what to do or where to go. Second, the LMI households may lack transportation to quickly leave their home in the case of an emergency. Lastly, LMI households with disabilities may not be able to leave their home due to improper ADA access to their home. So the point that I'm making is something that I care deeply about, which is that we have had a new fire risk assessment made in our city. And some of the places where we have available for building is in high fire risk areas. And we even have disabled and all that low income and sick people living in those areas already. So the point would be to not build there anymore, right? Like, just stop doing that. And so to anybody who's listening and you're paying attention to fire risk, please note that in this plan, it makes even more points than I had thought of, which is, I had thought we could put BMR housing into an area that doesn't have adequate transportation and stuff. I mean, like, they can't get there, they can't get out. What is the point of it? And then you add the fire risk, and I was like, anyway, I tend to get excited. That's why Ryan is so good for me.
That's such a broad, area.
It
The
is.
risk management, right? Because
Yes.
it's just not fire,
No, it's not just fire, it's this specific.
I understand,
Understand.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's broader than that, yes.
But I'm saying the state,
Yes.
yeah, earthquake, right? The
Yes,
whole
yes.
state is earthquake zone.
Exactly.
So how do you
Right.
manage that? So I'm just saying,
Exactly.
it's a pretty broad area, and it's not an easy topic of discussion.
No, it's not.
And it's a
easy. I'm
pretty,
Merely highlighting it
yeah,
for those
yeah.
of you who have interest and want to follow up on it. I know that it's nothing that we are doing specifically here in our plan, or anything, but because this was and it was a wonderful
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I want to
Hey,
say
Chris.
excellent report. It covered so many things and it's impossible to, like, oh, this is one that I have been following and I just wanted to excerpt it from this huge document.
Right.
And of course, there are other things. So I will stop there. I know that you may have other comments, the other commissioners may want to add a question or a comment about what we're doing today.
Do you have any more questions from the commission?
No, okay, so we can pull it then
Well-
back.
Seeing none, do we have any comments from the public in attendance?
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Public-
Hello, everyone. I'm Deanne from Rebuilding Together. And I just wanted to come tonight and see what was happening and where you all are in the process and let you know how appreciative we are of your support and supporting the staff recommendation. We have probably been serving Cupertino residents for many years now and really appreciate your willingness to support us and really been good about supporting us in a way that provides us with the resources we need to do significant repairs. Sometimes it's difficult to get that money to help us pay our staff and pay our rent, and we all have been real good at all of that as well. And so we appreciate the ability to serve Cupertino residents and address some of those concerns about making sure people get in and out of their home safely and move about their home safely. And so we do that as well as making sure they don't have a roof that leaks. So we do everything in between. So thank you again and answer your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for providing this.
Providing the services as well. Let's appreciate that the entity exists. Okay, so then now I think is the time to bring it back to
That's
the
right.
commission.
So we have a motion
A motion.
to approve the 2025-2030 consolidated plan and the 2025-26 annual action plan for submittal to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Do we have a motion?
Do I hear a motion? Motion. Okay. Commissioner Lee.
Do we have a second?
Do I have a second? Commissioner Ryan has made that second. And so we can deliberate further if you like. So if there's any comments that you may have, and I will have a comment at the end, but it's a comment from any of
I
Sure.
just want to follow up. So you mentioned that for people with disability.
Yeah.
The rental units are required to provide the accommodation.
Yes.
So does that mean like for like a big apartment, they would have? Cause like when I go to a hotel, they usually have a couple accessible units already.
Mhm.
So does that mean that for every like big apartment complex, they will also already have one or two units?
Typically, they will always have at least one or two accessible units. But if you know someone who's living in a unit and their unit is not accessible and then they do, become disabled, unfortunately, they can still request, reasonable accommodation to have changes made to the room.
I see. So
Yeah.
does that only apply to like long-term disability or like short-term also?
I don't know that one actually, but usually like if you can demonstrate any kind of significant difficulty, like moving and getting in and about, stuff like that, then they do have to make that reasonable accommodation. Yeah.
Yeah, the California Building Code says that you have to have a public accommodation. Any buildings that's accessible to the public, right? It's open to the public. So they should make it all accessible. So there's an exception for private residential, just residential units, right? So that it becomes more of a voluntary thing sometimes. So that's where I got to be careful. But if it's a public, any public buildings that's open to the public use, California Building Code says you have to have so many accessible units, and then parking, you should have so many accessible parking areas and so forth. It's anything that's open to the public. Whereas private, it becomes like, nobody can come and tell you in your home that you have to make it accessible, you know what I'm saying? So.
So
That-
in that
that's-
sense, like apartments, is that considered like public? Or
So again, so that's the voluntary. And then we could request.
I guess I'm, okay, because that differs from what Nikki was telling us, which I do understand for ADA. What you were saying is that if you request it, apartment complex will be required under ADA rules to do, which is different from what you were
If
saying.
it is open to the public, right? If it's
No,
open
no,
to the.
no, it's a authority that the person's living in.
No, I know. So that is like you're renting it to a person, which is the
Right.
public. Yeah, then you go and require. So you'll go request for accessible unit. So like hotels, it's again, it's a public thing, so they are required to have.
Okay, but her question was about, excuse me.
For
Commissioner
housing
Easy's question
rental.
was about apartment complexes.
Apartment
So since it doesn't seem to be totally clear, maybe we should take it under advisement and maybe get a more clear answer for you. If that's all right.
Yeah,
Commissioner?
yeah.
That sounds like something
Sure.
that we
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and is anything else? Do you have any other comments, Commissioner?
Oh, no, I was just curious about this whole like disability thing, and also like short-term, long-term, because I hurt my foot a couple months ago and I was unable to move around and it was very difficult to get up and down the stairs. So I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner,
I just wanted to make a comment about.
Sure.
I saw the report that we have identified 48 shelters,
Uh-huh.
individuals. Do you have any plan as far as how to support their needs? I understand there's no such thing in Cupertino, but are we working with the county or with the nearby city?
Yes.
So in my view, I lived in Cupertino for over 28 years. And this is a new phenomenon that only appeared during COVID. Still see people. It's not only just that you walk by and you have that sense of sadness,
Mm.
because somehow I feel like I able to help them, but it's just to see the same view over and over.
Yes.
The city that we're not used to, that's kind of disturbing.
Yes. So we have, in May, I believe May 2nd was the meeting. I went earlier. April 2nd was the meeting. We took to the city council a memorandum of understanding for Cupertino, as well as other West Valley cities, so Campbell, Los Gatos, Maestro, Saratoga, to kind of join together into a regional study to see what is our kind of combined feasibility of bringing a shelter to the West Valley. Hopefully to try to change that, right? The number of how many unhoused individuals are unsheltered, meaning not connected to any sort of facility that is giving them services. That study is still underway. We're expecting to get results actually at the end of the summer, this August, right? When I'll be presenting the findings of that study to the city council again. Yeah. So great questions.
I just want Sunnyvale has some Sunnyvale has shelters, San Jose has shelters.
San Jose does have shelters. Yes.
Sunnyvale also has shelters.
Sunnyvale has one shelter called the Armory. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah.
The West Valley Community Services.
Does not have a shelter, unfortunately.
It's not a shelter, but it does provide housing for people who are
Housing.
in need of housing.
Yeah. This is a great point, right? There's the services that gets people connected into housing, the case management to help them move through the system. But then there's also that last piece of the puzzle, which is the actual physical shelter for them to sleep in, right? In the meantime. And that's where we're trying to bridge that gap because unfortunately Cupertino does not have a shelter yet, right? Yeah.
Right, and I
Okay.
appreciate the question because in
Yeah.
fact, that's been true for at least the 6 years I've been here and certainly prior to that. I have read this report, 5-year plan before, and the answer was, no, we do not have one. And so this is now fast forward to the next plan and no, we still do not have one. So it's not unusual. And it is something that Sunnyvale is sensitive to because we wanted to use their, why don't we use yours? No, thank you, build your own. So there's like, a need. And I'm glad to see there's a report and, a study going and that we may,
Yes.
in fact, have something like that for our homeless people, because you're right. We see 48 people and you see them in. It's disturbing. It is disturbing. Thank you for your question. I appreciate the answer that you and Paul asked.
Yeah.
We heard of Monte Vista students sleeping under the bleacher
Correct.
because they don't have.
And that
I
needs to,
heard this
oh,
sometime back.
interesting and good point.
Yeah.
You know, did you hear about,
This,
the De Anza College is building, housing?
I sent emails to Nikki, should we bring that up as an agenda item?
So
Why? It's done.
That's more like,
I mean, I'm not sure what you mean, because it's done. They will be
so
doing it. Yeah,
it is a good question.
good question.
It is a good question. Based on the direction of the city council when they last met, when they were going to have kind of an emergency ordinance and they said change to a resolution. From what it sounds like, what they resolved is to try to address that issue as a land use problem, like trying to create distinctions for where student
Oh, I see
housing
what
will be built. And then
Yeah.
therefore,
you mean.
where it would need a planning application for that conversion.
Mhm.
And so
see
I
what you mean.
think based on that, we're expecting this issue to go through the planning commission going
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
And so that's probably where it will be addressed. Is
I
that-
thought the council voted no, right? Like there was a 3-2 saying that they are not in favor of that apartment unit going for Dianza housing.
3-2 in favor of a resolution, but interestingly, they actually did not vote on the emergency ordinance that they brought forth. So that was actually not voted on.
So
It's
that's,
almost like they're removing housing. You know what I'm saying? We are trying to bring or increase affordable housing in the city. This is going to displace.
okay,
People.
yes, and you made a good point, excellent point, which reminded me that they still do have a resolution or whatever, where they want to kick students out of the whole town. So it's a good point. Why don't we do that under agenda setting? Okay, I think that's a good place for it. So we can, thank you very much for bringing that up. Remind me of it.
I have one question. So are homeless and unsheltered the same or?
yes.
Kind of. Homeless, right? Not in a home. We understand that as a concept. Unsheltered homeless is a specific category within homelessness, which is someone who is unsheltered, but also they're not tied to any kind of facility in the continuum of care that's giving services. So no emergency shelter, no permanent housing, no transitional housing, right? They're on the street or they're in their car or they're in an encampment, right? A sheltered homeless person is someone who is already in the system. And we want to increase the number of sheltered homelessness people because those are people that are getting help. Yeah.
And I'll also clarify that increasingly you're hearing unhoused in place of homeless. Just more sort of respectful, more person-centered focal point alternative than so that's why you hear these phrases being
Terms,
being
yeah.
referenced.
So that's why we have to say unsheltered,
Any language.
because unsheltered means like
Not in a shelter.
not in.
Not in shelter.
Not in a shelter. Yeah.
Outside.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
Unhoused and homeless, I say.
yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Nikki, for
Yeah.
this was tremendous work.
Oh, thank you.
I felt like the report so intense. I don't know how it works, but thank you. And thank you for the update about the city council approving what the housing commission had recommended for the anti-displacement,
Right.
the MRU. So you mentioned there is a study. What does that mean? Who does the study?
So
Is that just you or the subcommittee?
a study session is a type of action item where they're not voting necessarily to approve or disapprove anything. They're really kind of exploring options to recommend further staff work, right? So, for example, December 19th, the Housing Commission met during a study session where we brought a whole bunch of different alternatives for things for our displacement policy. And we ended up settling on 2. And that what kind of became my work plan, right? To basically draft a policy for anti-displacement. So previously, the city council was gonna have 2 meetings, an additional study session, and then one later meeting just to approve. They decided to combine the 2, right? Because they feel that they're ready to basically talk about the ordinance and then also pass an ordinance.
Well, that's good to hear that it's far enough along for that.
Yeah.
So basically the city is going to approve the fact studies to be made or an actual plan that we can come with some city ordinance and actual. What's gonna happen?
It's hard for me to say what's gonna happen, because that really depends on what the council decides. But we're hoping that they, right, we'll have a staff recommendation, which is to move forward with the housing commission recommendation. But what they decide is up to them.
May I ask a clarifying question of
Yeah.
you? Because there are two things that he answered. One is a study for shelter, a shelter. And the other was the anti-displacement. So I wasn't sure which question you were asking about.
Now I tied it up to the anti-displacement of the
Anti-dis-
MR units that the city council is going to talk about and vote about and on a twice postponed meeting.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
new one will be June
Yeah, okay. I just-
17.
Yeah. Yeah,
So I have to say, kudos to you, Nikki. I attended that presentation at the Campbell Community Center, and you're so well prepared, but always willing to answer questions. I stayed away from Cupertino booth because I like he's already so busy. You had created some good visuals for people to see what the strategy is in Cupertino, and it's great. However, since the last, I think you mentioned something about that more strategies have come.
oh,
Something maybe we learn
So-
from other
so-
things or.
the recommendation is still the same. The council just wanted more discussion on alternatives. So that's gonna be the one way that discussion is gonna be, look a little different going to city council. It's just, there's gonna be more me explaining all the other alternatives that I looked at as well. That's just what that is, yeah.
Okay.
Do you need our help with any feedback in this?
You know, they might ask that the chair attend, to talk about the recommendation. Otherwise, I appreciate
Anyone
it.
can
Right?
attend.
Yeah,
Anyone can attend,
yeah,
not just.
yeah.
Anyone can attend, but typically when we ask is, suggest is, for an item that's coming through a particular commission, going to the city council for approval, that the chair, try to be available as possible. That doesn't always happen, or if chair's not available, then someone else can attend, or none, right? You've seen the recent council meeting, not all the commissions are represented, so it's hard to.
Yeah.
I want to say one more last thing. We worked so hard on our last meeting to approve how the funding will be allocated. And when the city council approved, gave me a sense of pride. Because, okay, great, if we
Tell them that.
it made it easier for them.
Yeah,
That-
yeah.
That's good. It's very good.
Shall we call the question?
1 second, because let's see. Everybody has their comments, and I guess the main thing I was gonna say is what you did, which was, it was a really good report. Excellent report, and I thought that because it went into such depth, and I think one thing that everyone here may not be aware of is how it's different than the previous one, in part because you did a great job on it, and in part because of things that have happened in our city that are being coming to fruition now, like the things that we talked about last meeting, and housing element, which is it still has other things to do, but this anti-displacement ordinance is one that was in the housing element
That's right.
as an action item.
Right.
So there's a number of action items like that in our housing element. So it's an exciting time. It's something that we need to keep working on, but I was very impressed with the report. So, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
And yes, we can now take a vote.
All right,
Everybody ready for a vote?
so we'll take roll call. As I say your name, please say aye, nay, or abstain. Chair Cunningham,
Aye.
Vice Chair Yi,
Aye.
Commissioner Knight,
Aye.
and Commissioner Jean.
I
The motion passes unanimously to submit the con plan and end plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah.
Okay, so, moving on down our list, and we have, next action item is the staff and commission reports, and I would be happy to, I'm gonna report out on the mayor's report, but if you have staff, or there's other community reports, we can do those as well.
No, none reports from staff. Thanks, Ryan, for all your work. See you this fall, and that's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Okay,
I
so
kind of gave a report on that event actually that I attended.
what did I say it again?
It was a collaboration of all cities,
Oh.
educating the public on their rights, their renters' rights and such, and the opportunities. So there was the booth with the legal services provided, and every city has their own booth as far as showing what's going on with them. I felt this well attended, however, I recognize that many people, including myself and my neighbor, do not quite have the correct address. It says only community hall, which maybe we visit sometimes, so I wonder if next time maybe shall we go by you? Make sure, because that place is made with numerous buildings.
Right.
And it was so hard to find a specific room. There was no, per se, clear signs
Yeah.
to guide traffic and people.
That's an excellent point. So that's the housing, we're calling it the Housing Resource Fair.
Oh,
We're thinking we're gonna make it into an annual event, right? And where each of the different West Valley cities takes a turn hosting it. To try to like do outreach on, fair housing, tenant rights. Also just trying to bring landlords out to educate them on what are the new housing laws they need to be following. Also bringing out the administrators to get people signed up for, services and things like that. So yes, next year, I think Cupertino will be hosting it and we'll probably be having it at the Puma Center. So we'll try to get the address right next.
is this part of the May month of housing? We keep getting things from Silicon Valley
Oh,
level. Is this a fair, one that we're planning to do then?
Yeah.
Because of that?
Yeah.
Some
Kind
other
of, yeah.
organization.
we picked the months of April and May because they're Fair Housing Month and Affordable Housing Month. It kind of makes sense. So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. And yeah, we plan to do it generally in between April and May every year.
Okay.
This event was April 21st in Fair Housing Month because the Fair Housing. One, yeah.
So, but what's I guess because of the fact that I know there's a month long stuff that there's all kinds of events you can go to.
Yeah.
And I thought somewhere even in the con plan, you said something about Cupertino becoming more, doing something during the month of May. And so that's why I'm wondering,
That's what that is.
this is what
Yeah.
comes from the con plan.
So it actually comes from the housing element. We're committed to basically doing some sort of fair housing tenant landlord outreach at a biannual basis, right?
Yay.
To try to get people educated, right? On what are your rights in terms of housing.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the question came up because I have actually attended in May. There's a whole month of May that organizations put on things for below market rate housing and all this kind of stuff, funding, financing, all that stuff. And so that's why I was wondering. This particular affair was a part of that. It doesn't matter what it is because there's a number of different ways to put it out. I was just trying to
Yeah.
understand how it fit. right,
Yeah.
Into everything else. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's all connected, yeah.
It's all connected.
All
Yeah.
connected.
Okay. So that's all good. I was gonna talk about the mayor's meeting, so I have to close this little guy. Because the mayor's meeting was interesting. Oh, this isn't it. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, just one of them is kind of a basic thing. June the 13th at 1 o'clock in Jolly Park. There is the opening of it's not called disabled park, but.
Like,
Accessible
What?
Accessible
Accessible.
playground unit?
Yeah, it's the accessible playground, yes, and that's on June 13th at 1 o'clock. I live close by there, so I walk by it all the time. It's like beautiful. It's wonderful.
It's on my calendar.
Called,
The Tolman Park ribbon
oh,
cutting.
ribbon cutting. Okay, so that's the ribbon cutting on June 13th. Oh, the anti-displays in it, which you already talked about, because that did come up at the mayor's meeting last night. They gave all kinds of information about the Westport was approved. Westport was approved. If you are familiar with that, the Westport street here,
Stevens Creek.
Stevens Creek, right across from
Mayor
Deanza
Avenue.
Boulevard,
Yeah.
Mayor Avenue. They are having a, gosh, good Connie.
It's the Oakmont.
Assisted living, senior assisted living, market rate rentals. Plus some, for, home care. That they were unable to get financing for their original thing that they were going to do, so they changed it to add some more units in the assisted living, but to take away some retail. So it was, went to the planning commission, and then just, this week, it came before city council and it was approved. So that means we're gonna see, that being finished too, and that's another exciting thing for housing in general, because that's another vulnerable population, senior people. And that work is gonna start, reasonably soon as well. So that is exciting, that plus the Mary Avenue, plus the,
Project.
well, I wasn't thinking either. There's another one.
Right.
So, no, it's more, the Deanza project for the student housing. That's the one I was thinking of, because that's just right here. So we're gonna have student housing, we're gonna have senior housing, and we're gonna have the, for the extremely low income. So that's 3 projects, and in our city, that's pretty well to have 3 projects, wouldn't you say?
Things are changing.
And Chair, I'll also add for the Westport, usually for the development projects, we might be aware, once they get the land use entitlements, that's really step 1.
Yeah.
And then they go out and get financing. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to see some numbers coming in.
Right.
But that's really step 1. So
Well,
once they're able to secure financing, then we'll know better what that schedule might look like.
but they did say that they needed these changes in order to secure the finance. Because they'd already been to what, 16 financings or something?
They've also,
60 and couldn't get financing.
they also testify that they don't have financing at the moment, that the land use approval will allow them to go out and secure financing. That's correct. So we'll see. And then the student housing transition, when the sale is completed, exchange hands. I believe that the number that will start looking at a transition when the current leases expire.
Right,
So that was-
2026.
Right, so that'll be another 1.5 years roughly before they start any of them.
So what you are wisely suggesting is that I not get so excited ahead of all this.
We're,
Just temper.
We'll
It's okay to be excited.
Yeah.
wait for we'll wait.
it's okay to be excited. I just want to make sure that the message
That
is.
everybody
Yeah.
understands.
But those
You're right.
apartments, I thought they were just gonna reuse the existing apartments. That's why they're taking over, right? Because they don't have to build.
Well, we don't actually know what their exact plans are, so there's 90 or 94 apartments there currently, right? And then the plan I hear is 300 plus beds or student units. So how are they gonna make that happen within 94 units? I don't know.
I'm imagining bunk beds, a lot of bunk beds.
Well,
We don't know.
it sounds like a dormitory kind of situation.
Yeah, each apartment will host like 4 students.
Exactly.
Okay, so
We had children that shared one single room, small one, with bunk beds for students.
So not homeless, is
Not
what we're saying.
homeless.
So what we're saying is, not homeless. Okay, I'm sorry to have gotten ahead of the curve, because yes, you're right, we don't need misinformation going out from our commission.
Right. But it is
Sorry to
exciting
the
times.
public.
But it is exciting
Exciting
times.
times.
It-
We'll just say
it's
exciting
exciting
times.
to hear.
We do have a lot of approvals and we do expect things to happen, so. And we'll update you as they happen.
Yeah. Okay. Then. Oh, well, then I won't talk about that, because they were talking about perhaps more housing Pizza Hut Staples coming up in 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Townhomes at an Arab Red location.
Yeah, so-
All of this was all discussed at the.
Yeah, the Summer Hill,
mayor's meeting.
yeah, that's the Summer Hill development, and that's tentatively slated for planning commission meeting on June 10th. It's not confirmed yet, depending
Okay.
on a number of different things from the developer, so once we know for sure, then notice. Yeah, but tentatively that's scheduled for June 10th. At planning commission.
Okay, so if these are not to get everything straight all at once, but anyway, then I will just moving along, what other things mattered? Well, it kind of mattered to me. We were talking about my piece of it, right? I was talking about our housing commission stuff. And I said to them, yay, that, excuse me, let me say it correctly, right? That we had sent our recommendations to the council and those had been approved for Shady's Housing Mary Avenue project. Specifically. I don't know why I mentioned it specifically, but I did. And the mayor said, well, you know, they need to put in more parking. Which I thought was like, maybe not appropriate. Oh, the mayor said at the time, just like they had said at the meeting, at the council meeting, they had said, well, we approved the money, but you really need to go off and look at putting more parking in. And then they started talking about parking. And then at some point, the vice mayor said, well, that's not, designed from the dais. And so they stopped designing from the dais and they sent it on. So it was a little confusing whether or not they got the money or
So-
what they had to do with part. Anyway, the point that I was making
Yeah.
wasn't so much that they brought it up at the council, was that we were having this mayor's meeting. And she brought it up again to me, like as if I
As
have
if you have
some,
a choice.
I,
Yeah.
well, like, for starters, that's not what we were talking about.
Yeah.
We were talking about their plan and do it. And so I just thought it was a little, it's to be aware that you may well be approached by just an off-site conversation, by the mayor, perhaps. And I just thought that was, well, not offside. If you happen to attend the mayor's meeting in the future, just be aware that she may say something that you go, oh, that wasn't part of what we were doing here. And I just said, I'm sure they will. Consider the parking. No, I said, I'm sure they will consider parking.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Correct me, maybe
Please.
because you're
I'm-
a specialist.
Yeah.
I believe that Mary Avenue project has been approved, however, the biggest concern the residents nearby was that having 40 new units is gonna take more parking, limited already parking spaces in the neighborhood. So I think during the city council, there was a proposal that can allocate, give this project more funding. Maybe another $1 million funding.
Yeah.
With the idea that the developers can consider building underground garages.
Something.
So they don't take the existing street space or, but rather still tackle the parking need by building under the building. But I don't know how that went.
Yeah, well, that's what the planning
it was-
division is
that was-
looking at now,
yeah.
I'm sure.
That was a substitute motion. It wasn't voted on, right? What they voted on, right, was to increase the amount of funding to the Mary Avenue project to $3 million and to fund Eden Housing project for 1 million and some change.
Yeah.
And, development standards, right, will be looked at, explored all throughout the planning process,
Right.
right? And it will be decided when it gets to the planning commission. And I'm sure the developer will do all their due diligence, right, to try to make peace with the neighborhood in any way possible.
Make
Right?
peace with the neighborhood.
Make peace with
I
the
love that.
neighborhood. Right? What I can comment on that, that's not this, right? We don't do
Right,
that.
that is, well, that is with us, and
Yeah.
that's why it was a little disconcerting, and all I said
Yeah.
was, well, I'm sure they will
And that's
do
the
something.
tactful thing to do.
But
Yeah.
what you said was better.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will do their due diligence,
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
If
Thank you very much.
she tries to push you about that, just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just thought you should be aware that, it is, usually you go there and they don't ask you anything. us, housing, they want to talk to arts and science and all this stuff. Anyway, we had an exciting time this time. So that's the end of my report out on the mayor's meeting. So, there's one more thing, right? Agenda setting? I think, if we can close that, I guess. There's no more questions. And then we can talk about agenda setting. So you were talking about something to do with
I
agenda
also
setting.
want to talk about that housing,
Yeah.
the student housing, the proposed DNZ student housing.
Do you mean the proposed housing, or do you mean the proposed ordinance that says we can't build any more student housing within the footprint of Cupertino? Which do you mean?
Well,
Both?
what I mean is using the existing apartment complex,
Mhm.
displacing the current residents
Mm-hmm.
and using it to accommodate DNZ students.
Okay,
We'll
Well-
put on the agenda sending potentially discussing the conversion of McClellan Terrace.
yeah, that's an interesting agenda item.
I mean,
Because of the fact that it was resolved at the
Yeah.
council.
I know, I don't know whether it's gonna do anything at all just by talking, but it's at least to be good to put it out there. So it is known.
Okay,
It's,
I just want to say that I have to admit, I thought you were going to be talking about the fact that what they did was to write an ordinance that did not allow student housing
Yeah.
within the whole perimeter of
of
Cupertino.
Cupertino.
Now, I found that to be extremely bad.
The question, let me
But
ask a
that would
question.
be something we could talk about.
So the ordinance that doesn't allow student housing within Cupertino, right?
Mhm.
When you take the Dianza property,
Right.
or even the public school property,
Mhm.
they all fall under the state jurisdiction, correct?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's correct.
It's a school has its own,
Yeah, public
has its own district.
Public, so they all fall under the state.
That's correct.
We cannot dictate what
That's
they
correct.
can and they cannot do.
Right.
Correct. We do
So-
review some building permits for safety.
Right.
So how does this help?
Question for the legal, for our city attorney's office, and which is why this item is being taken out by the city attorney's office.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
The same thing.
There's a lot of legal
The
questions.
Dianza Community College, that's also belongs to the state.
Correct.
So why is that even? It's just, you know.
That is the question. That is the question.
I'm not sure that topic is necessarily, appropriate. for the
Yeah, I don't
housing
think it's a
commission
housing
to
commission.
Discuss, also,
Yeah.
I don't.
certainly not for today, this is not agendized.
Yeah, it's
Right,
not
right,
agenda.
yeah, no, I-
I'm talking about.
To answer your question, yes, it's entirely mandated by the state, not local cities.
So, because the other thing where they are talking, and maybe I'm wrong about this too, but they are talking about having a ordinance that you can't build student housing within all of Cupertino, not on the school properties. Am I not hearing that right either?
I haven't seen an ordinance yet. I know the council wants to, have the city attorney's office come up with some kind of draft ordinance to provide better direction on the conversion to student housing. Some cities in the past have done so. For example, San Francisco, Berkeley, they've done something like that 10, 15 years past. So the council is interested in looking at something like that, and the city attorney's office is exploring some options and
So-
investigating. So, but right now, I don't have any more information than that.
Okay, and so that actually doesn't sound any more like an agenda item for us, but it is good for us to be aware of it because we care about housing and we can each as individuals go to the city council and become involved in it that way.
And we can certainly let you know if that item ever gets agendized at city council, so.
Yeah.
you can-
Yeah, I mean, again, the underlying question there, right? Having understood that state jurisdiction was a city jurisdiction. The current apartment complex is a city under the city jurisdiction, right? And then the state wants to use that for the state housing, well, meaning.
Private property.
Yeah.
Right now, it's private property.
Exactly.
They purchase
Yeah,
and
the
exchange
state
things,
is,
become state.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
correct. So it's just a question of how is that all okay with the city? Because the city is giving up the city housing to the state housing.
Well, the city's not giving up city housing because these are private apartments, right? So
Yeah, but serving the city, Cupertino residents, right? The apartment complex serves the residents of Cupertino, whose kids go to Monte Vista,
That's correct.
Kennedy. Now you're removing students from schools,
that's correct.
affecting the enrollment. So what happens to the schools? We already have school closures.
Okay, not.
So it's,
Questions, great questions.
These are great questions, but I
These
will
are
say that.
very much legal questions.
and it's a bigger,
It really
bigger
doesn't
issue.
fall under our purview, so as much as I would like to discuss it, I think we all know that this meeting, when it comes to an end, we all get to leave. So I would just ask you to take that really interesting question, since I didn't parse it down that far. But I think we need to take it offline, either to the attorney's office and, you know, city manager, different folks that will be able to answer your individual questions about it. Maybe it's too bad it's not part of the housing commission's purview, but
I understood that Lucia was suggesting that we make this an agendized item for future meeting, correct?
Correct,
Is that what you asked?
and we said just now in this discussion that it's not a housing commission
It's not.
item.
Okay.
Although
Even
we
though it
can
is-
get involved.
My concern
Even though
is,
it is affecting housing. It's not a housing commission.
If you look at our charter, if you
Uh-huh.
look at our charter, no.
It's affordable housing. Your charter is affordable housing.
Yeah, our
Just
charter is
affordable
affordable housing, and I'll put it like this.
Yeah.
Why don't we, you can take a look at the charter, and I can take a look at the charter, but I don't think it does. Nevertheless, if we want to change our charter to add stuff, which we have tried in the past, we weren't successful, but we can maybe do that.
it says something, Lucia, as much as that topic is a sensitive
Yeah.
subject for many residents.
Yeah. Right.
I attended a meeting one day, the young boy talked about and brought tears in my eyes, and I saw many people were. I'm afraid that even if we agree to put that in agenda item for September, maybe too late, because there's so much development, and by then I have the feeling we're gonna be talking and telling stories maybe instead of coming up with actions and recommendation. That's my.
No,
I could be wrong.
No, I think the only goal of putting it on the agenda is at least it's in paper that we talked about. That's all. Right? Rather that we raised that issue.
Interesting.
Whether-
You know why? You know
whether-
why that's particularly interesting. that you
Uh-huh.
say that? Right there in the commissioner's handbook, it says, this is not a discussion forum. You're supposed to be here to get some stuff done. So as interesting as many topics are, it's not a discussion forum. So I do understand exactly. what you're talking about. It's a very important topic, but I don't think it's probably, I'm not interested in putting it on an agenda. I guess, is that something?
Well, I would also caution too, because that particular topic has a lot of legal consideration to it.
No,
I have the capacity for that, so I think that discussion. I think the more appropriate setting will be the city council.
Setting.
And certainly you should be able to participate as a concerned citizen or representative as a commissioner as well.
And you got,
That's a good point, Brian. I was going, I understand, Lucia, you probably brought this up because neighbors or other residents have brought up to you this. I think we all as individual can share our opinion and contribute to the decision making.
and I guess if you all want to share an opinion, my opinion
So
is,
this is-
we need student housing, and by golly darn, they should go there. And the
Yeah,
neighbors
I'm
gotta
not
get
bringing-
used to the problem.
Yeah, I'm not bringing this up as my
That's
opinion, right? As commissioners,
That's
we're
why I asked
bringing,
my opinion,
as
because
commissioners,
that's
we're bringing in the community's
I understand.
feedback, right? So that's all.
I understand.
More of a
That was
community feedback.
the topic
Yeah,
or.
it's not my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
It's the
Yes.
community's feedback that I'm bringing it here.
I also.
That's pretty much what it is, yeah.
Then that's good, and yes.
Yes, I just wanna say, so I don't know if this counts as an agenda item, or like maybe I just need to ask Nikki specifically, but I do wanna like hear more about the ADA and.
Oh, only email. We'll email each other about that afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for your information, I mean, not for your temporary one, but for permanent folks, there are state agencies that help you with some things. My parents had in a different county, but their county, brought in grab bars and things like that because of a health issue.
Oh, so the county brought it in,
The
not
county did.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't state, and it wasn't ADA or any of that. I mean, there was a program and it was free to elderly people. So I'm just saying that it doesn't address your issue, but just so you're aware that there is another venue for people to get those kinds of things done to their homes. So, yeah, but anyway, I guess I'm going to call this meeting at 7:10.
7:10.